Hello and welcome to the Car Care Channel Reviews. This is a 2023 Mazda CX-5. Now we have reviewed the CX-5 before, the 2022 model. Overall, it was a very good SUV. And Mazda for 2023 didn't change anything. Everything is exactly the same. We do want to kind of update that review. I've driven this for a week. And we'll take a look underneath it. In the previous review, we did not kind of talk underneath the car, some of the mechanical aspects of it. So in this video, we will do that and more right after this. Let's start with a brief review of the technical aspects under the hood. This is the 2.5-liter four-cylinder Skyactiv G Turbo. Possibly one of the best things about the CX-5, and for that matter, many of Mazda models, is the fact that you have a choice of a turbo engine or a non-turbo engine. This is something, it's kind of a big deal. There's no other company that I can think of that gives you the option of the same car, same engine, turbo or non-turbo. Obviously, the turbo will make more power, better efficiency and all that, but for those of us that don't really care about that. They just want simple engine, naturally aspirated, no turbos, none of that stuff. You do have that option. And usually, when companies will put their smaller, kind of less powerful engine, you're stuck with the base model. Well, in Mazda land, you're not stuck with the base model. You can actually option them out either or. That is very good. Some of the highlights of this engine, and this is regardless if you go turbocharged or non-turbocharged. This engine has direct injection only. So carbon buildup could be an issue in the future, but there's not really heavy evidence, at least from what I researched, that this is something chronic. It's going to develop, depends on your driving style, and your maintenance, and what kind of gas you use, and all this stuff. But this is something that they could be prone to. I mean, looking at this engine bay, things are extremely simple maintenance-wise. There is no high-dollar repairs. I mean, look at the alternator. It just sits right there, right in front of you. Belt's very accessible. Engine computer right here. The only thing, and this is because of this turbo model, the turbo is in the backside. So servicing the turbo or anything it needs is kind of a cumbersome process. But on the other side, your intake manifold is right in front of you, so there's always a trade-off. There are a few things that I noted in the previous review, and we're going to kind of glance over them today. The idea to use plastic in coolant components. This powertrain, Mazda uses it in a lot of their cars. I mean, pretty much almost all of them. They love to do this, and the worst part is, if you lift this engine cover a little bit, this is your radiator cap in a plastic component. That is not the greatest idea in the planet, but this part seems simple enough to replace, so should it ever leak or cause any issues, you can easily replace it. Batteries under the hood, air filter is right here. Things are very simple here, folks. And the best part about this drivetrain is, has plenty of power for what this car is, not a sports car. It's quiet, it's refined, but the best part is the transmission. See, most manufacturers, CVT, 17-speed transmission, and all these complications. Well, Mazda decided to go a completely different route. See, Mazda is a small car company. They don't have the big bucks research that bigger companies have. But what they do have is brilliant engineering, and they do, and you see that everywhere. This transmission is just a 6-speed. And when you go into some other companies, that was 10 years ago. Here's a 2023 model with a 6-speed transmission. And no, it's not because they didn't update this model, because even the CX-50 that just came out has the exact same transmission. The reason for that is they have a very clever setup. They have a very intelligent torque converter with a proper multi-disc clutch. So as soon as you take off, that clutch engages, and now you basically have zero loss. To me, that works 100 times better than the CVTs, the dual clutch transmission, and all these 17-gear transmissions that you see everybody use. This is super smooth, works very well, and this is, to me, this is the highlight of this powertrain. Let's take a look underneath the Mazda CX-5. First thing you notice, everything is covered up in the front. But actually, these covers keep things clean underneath, but you have a very easy access for the oil filter, for the oil drain. Very simple to service. Yes, if you're doing transmission fluid or other fluids, you have to take these covers, but at least for the quick service, this is thought about, and you don't have to remove this entire cover just for an oil change. Something else about the suspension. Let's take a look at this front suspension. Very simple McPherson strut design, and you notice something about it. This is actually a vibration dampener. Kind of takes away from some of the vibrations as you go over bumps and whatnot. Doesn't really help with that hop that we talked about, but it's there nonetheless. Lower control arm has a ball joint on it that is not separate, and this is not a great idea in my book, but that's the design they went with. And something else that is cool about the CX-5 kind of shows its old schoolness. The knuckle is cast iron. Very, very interesting to see that in modern cars because everything is turning to aluminum. And moving back here, you have a catalytic converter. It's actually the secondary catalytic converter, not the main one. The main one is all the way up there by the turbo. And then if you look from here, you can kind of sort of see the turbo. It's really hard to see it. It's all the way up there behind the transfer case. I suppose it is more accessible from the back, but still a little bit of a difficult spot in the back. It would have been much better if it was in the front. This is all-wheel drive, so we have the drive shaft right here running on top of the exhaust, which is a pretty interesting design here. Lots of covers. That's where that noise insulation comes from. And then we follow that drive shaft. More supports here for the body. That's where this car handles really well because it has a lot of supports for rigidity. And then we go to the back, and this is something interesting. We talked about the CX-50 having a beam rear suspension. I was like, why did they do that? Because they already have an excellent independent rear suspension. I mean, this suspension is beautiful, works really good. This car drives really well. I mean, you kind of have a hard time telling if this is a sedan or an SUV because of this independent rear suspension that works brilliant. And on the brakes, you have electronic parking brake, which you see the motor right there on the caliper. Works pretty good, but some people dislike it. In my book, that is a lot less complication. I'd rather have this than have the parking brake shoes and all that mess. And then something about the all-wheel drive system. You have this cute little differential, kind of like the CX-50, even though that was meant for off-roading. This is not. Very simplistic design here. Transfer case is mechanical, always spinning the drive shaft. Here you have a magnetic clutch that engages the rear differential to drive the rear wheels or disengages it. Now, equally, with a few Mazda models we've seen this, the fit and finish on the sealer, now you see this piece of sealer hanging down. This is not the best. I mean, I don't see any leaks, but again, this is a brand new car. I hope we don't have leaks. This is just the appearance of it. You have a very big muffler here with dual tips. This car is a true winner from the Mazda family. Independent rear suspension, drives super well. Yes, does have the hop, which we'll talk about in a bit in the video, but I love how this car is made. Everything feels high quality. I mean, look at this big old heat shield for the fuel tank. This is such high quality. This material, you don't see this material a lot in heat shields, even in some good brands. You'll see more of this flimsy little thing, which they do have here, but at least they put good stuff and some not so good stuff. This stuff usually rusts out and breaks and causes rattles, while this remains solid, which is good. Let's talk about the outside and then the inside, starting with this. This is a signature model CX-5, top of the line, fully loaded. So I'll preview with you some of the options that they added. Some of them are good, some of them are really not worth the money. This car has so many badges. It's unbelievable. CX5, signature, all-wheel drive, Skyactiv G, turbo. So this is fully decked out. Let's start from the back. And to me, Mazda always made good-looking car. And the CX5 is just the right size, the right look. I really dislike the look of the CX-30. It just feels like they had to make a smaller car. The CX-50 looks good, looks very similar to this, but this is just looks right. From every angle you look at it, it looks really good. It looks mature and civilized. Something that was a complaint of me in the past, I said that the wheel arches in black just looked off. Well, I think this looks a lot better. It looks less utilitarian, less like a truck, more like a sophisticated sedan. I wish this was actually an option that's available in all the trims. Some people would like it to be black, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has their taste. But I feel like there's a lot of people that will want it to be body color and not just stand out being black like that. Looks great in my opinion. Some people will disagree, but that's fine. Going over what makes this kind of a handsome looking car. There's not really a lot going on in the design. I love this clever double buckle that makes the car kind of feel wider, but it's actually not. Because if you look at it from this angle, it's actually almost flat across. But when you go a little bit to the side and look at it from a side profile, it looks like this is like wide fender arches, but it's not. Pretty clever design there to make it look like that. And then we go to the front. I love how the front looks. It always looked really cool. It just had a sophisticated look to it. The headlights are not oversized. The only thing that is oversized that I'm noticing in a lot of Mazda models, the emblem. For lack of a better word, it's enormous and really kind of doesn't fit the rest of the front design. The reason for that is there is a radar sensor here for your adaptive cruise control. Perhaps they ran out of funds to make it smaller so we can have a smaller emblem, but that's one thing. And then a thing of the signature model. This has 360 camera. So you see the camera standing right there. There's also cameras underneath the mirrors. That's the thing about the signature model. The other thing about the signature model are the wheels, which are a little bit larger than the previous models, but they're okay looking, I suppose. I don't feel like they really match the design of the car, but that's just my opinion. Then we talk about the inside of the Mazda CX-5. I love this interior because you know what? There's no compromises here. There's no show off. It is a very, very comfortable interior, very functional. There is not really emphasis more on design over function. I love it. Real gauges, although the middle is a big screen, but they are real gauges. And then steering wheel controls are super clear, super simple. Radio controls here, cruise control here. There's not really much else. Headlights and turn signals and wipers. You don't need a master's degree to operate one. The one thing about the signature that gets added here, you have this very cool fake wooden look. And even that is so subtle, you can hardly notice it until I point it out to you. When you sit down here, it just blends in very well. And these seats, even though they probably look like black seats on the camera, they're actually brown, a very dark brown. You can barely notice it. And if you look on the door panel, right there, that's how you see the color difference. The rest of the door panel is black. Just the armrest part is brown. That's the only way you're going to notice it. Otherwise, it's such a subtle color. And that carries with the theme of this car of not being in your face. Now, the technology here is completely outdated. But that's okay, because that's the whole point of this car. It's a car you're going to drive every day. It's going to work. This is not a touch screen. You have this rotary dial. And while I dislike this, I love the volume, I dislike this. Everything here is high quality. Every button you touch, everything you operate makes a very high quality sound and feels well made. And this is where less is more. Can they spend a small fortune on a little cool rotary dial instead of this old school shifter? Sure. But why? What's the point? This works, feels great, feels very solid. Why change it? Same thing with the HVAC controls. Anybody can operate these because this is basically the same since cars from the 90s. Fan speed, auto, temperature for the drivers, temperature for the passenger, modes, and that's it. The addition to kind of the signature thing, you have cooled seats, which are a physical button right here. You have heated steering wheel as well, which is nice. Let's check out the back seat in the 23 Mazda CX-5. One thing I noticed, the entrance is narrow, but once you're in, this is my driving position. I mean, I have decent leg room. I'm about 5'7", to give you reference. Like the AC vents here, they're actually movable vents, and they're cool. You have a little bit of light here that you can control. It's pretty comfortable place to be. I like it. This works a lot better than the CX-30, which was not designed to have adults in the back seat. And let's look at the very back, because there is one thing that I absolutely love, and it kind of carries with the theme of this car. The back storage, pretty ample, pretty good. You're not going to carry couches here, but for a car in this segment, this is very good. Two things I want to talk about here. One of them is good, one of them is not very good. Let's start with the positive. I like that you can fold the seats from here. Now, some manufacturers will have the strap you pull or whatnot, but this works so well. You just pull it, it's like an old school door handle, and the seats come down. I like that. What I don't like, and this is not just Mazda, this is the entire automotive industry, these. So here's somebody in the automotive engineering world decided this was a good idea. And what this is usually the shock that holds the door up when you open it. Somebody decided to integrate the motor that automatically opens the door and closes it inside the shock. Well, here's what happens 10 years from now. This motor goes out. They're always being used constantly. Things do happen. That's fine. But usually when that happens in older cars, which used to have another mechanism that opened the door, you just disregard the power and you open and close it manually. Where when this fails, you can't open this. So you're going to have to fight this door to open it and then fight this door to close it until you replace these. And they are extremely expensive on all models. I don't like this design. I would have thought Mazda would be the company not to adopt this design, but I guess they did. It is what it is. But something good that kind of offsets this. Well, we have a spare tire. They did not join the fellow automotive manufacturers of getting rid of the spare tire. Even though, yes, many people don't even know how to change a spare tire anymore. But hey, for those that do, you have a proper spare tire here. It's a small one, but it's better than nothing. And of course, like all other Mazda models, you have the Bose subwoofer that is built into the spare tire, uses that cavity as kind of a base for the subwoofer. Pretty cool design there. But otherwise, and this is where we arrive at the signature package, I don't see a lot more stuff. Yes, you have heads-up display, which is very ancient and really more of a gimmick than a good thing. I don't see a lot added to the signature package. And this is where we arrive at one or two of the problems of this car. First one is the pillar, or rather the pillar location. If you're short, like me, or have an exact same driving position, this is something you want to watch out for in test drive. The pillar is huge, and on top of this, you have this section of the glass that is blacked out. So if you're in a specific driving position, this will actually block your view completely. Otherwise, the visibility is great in this car. This is the only thing. Perhaps if you're taller, you sit further back, it's not going to be as big of an issue, but this is something I noticed in my test drive. The other thing is, Because this is a short wheelbase car, it does tend to have a hopping feeling. Let me explain. You're going on a flat road that has very little kind of dips and divots. The car just starts shaking up and down, up and down. If you're driving at night, you'll see the lights dip up and down a lot. So it's not this as quiet and as refined as it is, and it is a star when it comes to how quiet this thing is on the inside. I mean, it is Lexus level quiet. But then that popping feeling kind of ruins that. That's the one thing. And then the other thing, which is kind of defeats the purpose of this whole car and Mazda's whole philosophy on things, this is a little outdated if you're into tech and all this stuff. It is actually very outdated because not much have changed with this model. Mazda is not known to radically change their models. They're a smaller company, they do things well, and when they do something well, they just keep going with it. So, no touchscreen, infotainment is old, things are older, there's no cool new tech. The other thing is, and this is more in the upgraded models, the Bose sound system. While it is good, better than your average base model RAV4, CRV radio, it is not exactly a booming one. Basically, any other car manufacturer with a better radio will be better. This is not exactly tip-top sound quality. And the best part is, when you go to change the EQ, if you would, usually you have bass, you have mid, and you have treble. In this, you only have bass and treble. What happened to the mid? I usually like to lower my mids. I play bass on the side, so I like my bass pretty high. Well, I can't do that here. So this is something where, okay, it's a Bose sound system, and you can't raise the mid. Again, not the end of the world. Folks, let's make no mistake. This car is a brilliant one. If you are someone that don't really care too much about technology or the latest and the greatest, basically this is not an iPhone on wheels. We have Tesla for that. The second thing is, you're a practical person. You want a car that has some luxury features the old school way. It's quiet, it's refined, it's comfortable. Yes, it does have that hopping, which could be an issue, but other than that, there is not many cars in this segment that drive this well, this quiet, and it's actually a pretty athletic drive. It's not some thrilling car to drive, but it's a lot more confident and inspiring than basically anything in this segment. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of our other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.